Turning now to Washington and the standoff over raising the debt ceiling. President Biden is expected to meet again on Tuesday with congressional leaders as they try to reach an agreement. The president said this weekend that he's optimistic about negotiations, but House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said today the two sides are still far apart. If there's not a deal by June 1st, the U.S. could run out of money to pay its bills. Joining us now is Representative Ron Estes, Republican of Kansas, who's a strong advocate for fiscal responsibility. Representative, we appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Well, thank you. It's good to be on this evening.
Over the weekend, Congressman, the president spoke to reporters about a possible meeting coming up on Tuesday. He was asked about an update of having talks over the weekend. He didn't go into that in more detail. What are you hearing about a possible meeting sometime this week, if not Tuesday? And what specifically do you believe will be discussed?
Yeah, they need to have another meeting this week. Obviously, the president's kind of drug his feet on this, tried to talk about from a political standpoint. You know, it was 97 days after he told Kevin McCarthy he was going to get together with him again, and they finally got together last week. And so it's important that we do something about this. You know, the House Republicans we've done our job. I mean, we looked at what was going on, and instead of having President Biden and Senator Schumer call for a quote unquote clean debt ceiling increase, just so the spending continues, we've got to focus on how do we bend the curve on the spending. You know, one of the things that doesn't really get talked about much is this fiscal year, 1 out of every $5 that the federal government spends is being borrowed because we're spending more than we have coming in on revenue. So that literally means that we're continuously every second spending and borrowing another $45,000 and just adding that to the nation's debt. And so we've got to work on that. And that's what we tried to do with the Limit, Save, Grow Act was let's recognize that we've dug the country into a deep hole over the years with multiple Congresses and multiple presidents. And so now we've got to focus on how do we reduce the spending? How do we get the spending back in line with the revenue? We do recognize it's going to take longer than a year. It took us longer to get here. But our whole focus with the Limit, Save, Grow Act was to help make sure that we could continue to keep the government operating, make sure we provide the services that were needed for Americans across the country, but also that we got serious and we were responsible with the taxpayer money that's being sent to us.
A minute ago, you said the Republicans did their job. When the president was asked about tougher work requirements for certain government aid programs, Republicans, he didn't like the fact that they're proposing for tougher aid programs as far as Medicaid is concerned. He said that's a different story. So what exactly do Republicans want to change with Medicaid?
Yeah, well, I think the piece that has been laid out there for Medicaid, particularly the expansion of Medicaid through Obamacare, was that able-bodied adult men and women who do not have kids are entitled to free Medicaid under the way that states can set up under Obamacare. And basically what we're saying as Republicans, that if you're an able-bodied adult, you don't have kids at home, you don't have disabilities, you should work some. And what we're saying is that 20 hours a week of work is not an unreasonable expectation of the American taxpayers as they provide this support for folks that, you know, maybe in a situation temporarily that they need a hand up. But the expectation of Americans who are so generous with supporting other people, but the expectation is that there ought to be a contribution and there ought to be a responsibility on the part of the recipients as well.
Congressman, let's switch gears here. Earlier this afternoon, Special Counsel John Durham released a 300-plus page report criticizing the FBI with the Trump campaign and Russian collusion in 2016 election. Some of the things that were mentioned in the report: the FBI rushed to investigate Trump, the FBI failed to live up to its standards, and the FBI should have never launched a full Trump-Russian probe. Hearing that, what do you say about this whole thing that, as Trump has mentioned, it's been a huge witch hunt?
Yeah, it really is sad that for the last 6 years we've had to suffer through this. I mean, we all know the facts are that the Clinton campaign created this dossier, the Steele dossier, that started so much of this discussion, that they worked with the Democrat National Committee. They accused President Trump of actually colluding with the Russians when, in fact, they were colluding to pull together this fake story. And then what we've seen is that so many people in leadership, particularly at the FBI, decided to put their political leanings above their responsibility that they'd sworn to uphold the Constitution. And as a result, justice wasn't being served through that process. So we need to make sure that there's so many good men and women that serve in the FBI. We need to make sure that there's not political pandering by the leadership, that we focus on how do we make sure we get the right things done and not waste taxpayer money on frivolous activities like this and not let politics creep into things that should be done for the good of the American people.
Congressman Ron Estes from the great state of Kansas, we appreciate you joining us and filling us in and giving us insight on two topics here that are very important. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.